Welcome to The Helping Conversation, an exploration and celebration of the practice, art, and science of facilitating trusting, safe, inclusive, and effective helping conversations with others. Recorded at RockVox Recording and Production Studios, Rochester, New York. Mouth off at RockVox, rockvox.com. Having enjoyed an almost 40-year career facilitating his own authentic brand of the helping conversation, your host, Executive and Recovery Coach, Keith Greer.
Hello, everybody, and thank you once again for making the time today to sit in with me on this episode of The Helping Conversation. For the second time in not a very significant amount of time, my guest today is going to come to us from the world of athletics. That is not a coincidence, given my love for athletics, having grown up playing multiple sports, continue to try and make my way through the adult world of athletic participation and competition. And as I've shared before, some of the people that I walked away with the highest level of respect and regard for from my 30 years in school social work were my colleagues who coached on the modified JV and varsity level. And all of those folks who did it, especially in the world of public ed, obviously, we're not doing it for the money. We're not doing it for the glory and fame. And we're doing it because of some combination of their love for the sport, their love for sport in general, as a mechanism for helping our children and teens and young adults grow and develop. And we're doing it out of a love for working with children and teens and young adults, and being a very significant part of their life. And I know to this day that there are some memories of mine from athletic coaches as far back as probably elementary school who, it saddens me, I don't remember names, but I remember faces and I remember voices because these folks were significant in my life. And so today we're going to continue on this theme of viewing athletic coaching through the lens of a helping conversation, a type of helping conversation where, in this case, we're helping people grow athletically, and we are helping them grow in terms of an assortment of other kinds of life skills that will serve them well wherever they wind up in their lives. So would you join me in giving a very warm welcome to my guest today, Jen Nardi. How are you doing, Jen?
I'm well, thank you. Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Oh, I'm looking so forward to this conversation. So let me fill everybody in a little bit on who Jen is and her background. Jen Nardi is in her fourth season, I believe. Did I get that number right? At Manhattanville?
Yes, that's
fourth
correct.
Season as head coach of the Manhattanville College women's lacrosse team, where she currently boasts the best winning percentage in program history. Jen previously was the head women's lacrosse coach at Smith College, guiding the Pioneers for 3 seasons. In her first season at the helm, she was named Smith Coach of the Year. Following her time at Smith College, Nardi coached at the club level before moving into her other present position, as if she's not busy enough, as executive director of the Brooklyn Crescents Lacrosse Club in January 2016. She has spent the last 5 years managing all logistics of the program that features more than 600 young athletes of all ages. Nardi also serves on the Diversity and Inclusion Subcommittee and the Member Experience Committee for U.S. Lacrosse. Jen has a decorated 4-year career as a goalie for the University of Massachusetts from 1998 to 2001, graduating as the school's all-time leader in saves. She was named to the All-Northeast Region First Team as a junior when she backstopped the Minute Women to an Atlantic 10 tournament championship and led Division I in both goals against average and save percentage. Jen graduated from the University of Massachusetts with a degree in hospitality and tourism management and went on in 2013 to earn her master's degree in sports management from Southern New Hampshire University. So again, Jen, thanks for making the time to be here.
Happy to do it.
Great. And we're allowing Jen a little bit of time to catch her breath as she was stuck in some lower Westchester County traffic getting home to join us today. And having grown up down there, we were just talking about that. It is one of the things about living up here in today, sunny Western New York, that I do not miss, is that traffic. So, Jen, let's start at the beginning. I always ask my guests to just, as much as I shared a bit of your journey, tell us a little bit more about what your journey has been over the years that has resulted in you holding on to these two positions right now, both your head coaching duties as well as your work as executive director for the Brooklyn Crescents.
Sure. Frankly, I feel that coaching is something that I sort of stumbled into. I certainly had no intent of becoming a collegiate coach at any point. But I do think that some of the early experiences that I had playing sport, really, it's like, hindsight, I can see all of the puzzle pieces and how this just was a pathway that was meant for me. I had really, really great experiences as a child playing sport. A lot of that came from playing basketball, actually. And, I feel like I was fortunate to have my father be my basketball coach. I think some kids may not have that same experience, but my dad was, as a coach, just really very supportive. And, it just set me up for such a love of sport. And it was a place where I really felt comfortable in the world, really, and it helped build confidence. And it started me off on a journey of being able to, go to college and get a scholarship and play at a high level. And then really that just turned into, I don't know what life would be for me without sport being some part of it. But certainly, having taken that and become a collegiate coach, I just know for me the role that sport has played and the development as a human being that, sport has been so important for me that I really naturally sort of took to becoming the coach to help young people, sort of build that confidence, that the self-development part of it, and then the opportunity to do that at a youth level in an urban environment presented itself. And I just feel like, these two things are so linked to one another. It's like to be able to start with these kids at a younger age and just it's providing opportunity and giving them the ability to maybe be someone that they would never be if sport didn't enter their life. And, I just feel so fortunate to have both of these things. It is very busy, and it can be overwhelming at times, but the work for both of them, it's so rewarding that I feel quite fortunate.
Right. So we're going to get into both of those topics because they're related, and I'll be curious with you as far as where there are similarities in skill sets and differences in skill sets, coaching college-age women versus coaching younger girls. But before we get there, the first place I'm curious about, and I often ask my guests to think back to when you were a kid, because I am a very big believer that it is not a coincidence for most of us in any form of the helping world that we're in the helping world. So when you were a kid, love of sport to the side, because we know that you can be a very successful athlete and be an absolutely horrendous coach. Because just because you have the skill set does not mean you know how to teach it. So teaching it, that helping part, is very significant. So the fact that in addition to love of sport, you found yourself in the helping world of coaching. If I had known you when you were younger, as elementary school, middle school, high school, whatever, your participation in the sport to the side, what might have been going on then that would have been an indication that Jen was eventually either going to be in coaching or some other form of a helping position?
Yeah, that's interesting. And I think that, one of the parts of the sport for me it really had very little to do with the actual game of it. It was the team. And I think that I just naturally found myself always in some sort of leadership role, or just, for me, it was never about winning or losing. It was about the team. So even if, for example, even if I had the best game of my life, if my team had been unsuccessful, that always just weighed heavily on me. It was more about helping everyone be successful, not so focused on myself. And I think that I can see myself in those roles from a young age. And yeah. So from early on, that's pretty significant. From early on, there was this focus on team success, on your role as a part of the team versus, I'm front and center, and as long as I had a great game, I'm good. And so I'd be curious with you about your experience being like that, because any of us who have played any amount of sport know that very often on our teams, the person who was seen as the leader or the so-called captain of the team was not the person with the C on their jersey. You just knew. And I have a feeling you were that person. Everyone just knew, whether you had a C on your jersey or not, that this was a person we looked up to for leadership. Absolutely. I think it's just part of it. It's just my personality. It's just innate to like who I am. And, sometimes I did have the C and sometimes I didn't. But again, I think to me that really was not of any importance. I wasn't looking for things to put on an athletic resume.
Right.
I was just looking to have fun with my friends, doing something I loved and watching all of us succeed.
Yeah. Yeah. So you were the athlete that loved coming to practice.
I wouldn't. I did. I loved practice. I was like any kid, any athlete that, if there was a lot of running, maybe it wasn't thrilling to be there. But, I loved playing with my friends. So, I didn't mind it.
Yeah. Yeah. Coming up through childhood, teenagehood, and into college and since, who comes to mind as some, maybe one or two coaching role models?
Yeah, I think that, again, my father was a big one for me, just because I think he also didn't seem to be, he wanted to win, but he wasn't overly focused on that. And I think the other thing that I really appreciated about that was that although it was my father, he really was able to strike a very lovely balance of like just coaching and not holding me to a higher standard or coddling me in any way. I felt completely just part of the team. And he didn't, he didn't look through rose-colored glasses just because it was his kid doing something. So I think I learned a lot from that experience. And then in high school, I had coaches that were all of my coaches were very meaningful to me in ways that, some of it was taking the good parts and some of it was taking parts that maybe, at the time didn't seem so good. But I think what I saw in every coach that I ever had was that they really cared. They seemed to really care. And I think as a child or a teenager, you don't even understand that they're doing it for no pay or very little pay. And, I had a lacrosse coach in high school that I just remember him talking. He would spend hours upon hours reviewing film, doing what collegiate coaches do. And for what, for a small stipend, perhaps he was doing it because he loved the game. But I think he also really actually cared about the kids that were involved.
Yeah. Yeah. That's such a significant part. And it can sound a little trite sometimes, I think, when we talk about it. Well, of course, coaches care about the kids. You don't always feel that from every single coach. And yet, when you have a coach that has that skill, because I will argue that's a pretty significant skill, it makes participation in that team about so much more than just the game for everybody.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And is the cornerstone of for the folks on the team, do I trust this person? Do I trust this person not only about their knowledge of X's and O's, but do I trust them? Because I hear this all the time from students in general about teachers. Do I trust that these people see me as more than just a person in their class? Yeah,
absolutely. When I was in high school, I actually had no idea about what Division I, II, or III lacrosse was. I didn't know what it meant. I had I'm from New York. I am going to go to a SUNY school, and this whole pathway unfolded for me that was revealed to me by a coach saying, "Hey, you're a good enough player where if you could play D1." And I will never forget that moment in time, because I was like, I don't know what that means. And I had to ask a friend, what is he talking about? And for that single moment has really defined the rest of my life. Yeah. So it's pretty incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. One little moment like that of somebody just letting you in, expanding your view. I think I shared this a couple episodes ago with in the episode with Mike Offrichtig from Columbia. I have this memory. Now, I was not ever one who ever had the conversation about getting a scholarship. I have a memory from, I want to say, either 5th or 6th grade in Little League Baseball. I don't remember the coach's name, but I can picture, like it was yesterday, standing there with my mom and hearing him use the word potential for the first time I'd ever heard it, that I had potential as a baseball player, and like so loving hearing that, right? And just expanded a little bit of my thinking at that moment in time of who I, quote, could be as a baseball player. So those moments, they're powerful.
Yeah, for sure.
They're powerful. So of all the different ways you think about your coaching, and let's just start at the in your role at Manhattanville. So you're coaching with 18 to 22-year-olds, give or take a year. Talk a little bit about what any models, any theories, any modalities, anything you've learned that really frames how you relationship build with the women that you coach.
I played Division I lacrosse, and I started my career coaching Division I lacrosse, and I made a transition to Division III. And it was a conversation with another coach that actually had a pretty significant impact. It influenced me in a way that I didn't expect it to. But she at the time said, Nardi, you have to adjust your definition of success. And I think that for so long, participating in D1 and then coaching at that level, the focus was success, frankly. I mean, that was, where you were getting judged was on wins and losses. As a coach personally, that's maybe not what I focused on, but that was a big part of the job. And, adjusting my definition of success really helped me to connect with my athletes, still athletes. These were kids that were wanting to be successful, but it just, it helped me to see them. I think I had these moments of like, I'm seeing them now as whole people, and I'm wanting to understand the whole person, because I maybe don't have so much pressure, or there's not so much emphasis on this idea of, if you're not winning 50% of your games, then you may be out of a job.
Right.
So,
right.
Obviously I want to win games. Every coach that coaches does, but there are a great many other ways to define success that to me are just far more important. And they are things that I focus on more than getting in that W column.
So what are those? So what would be some other pieces of that definition of success?
Yeah, I think that success through hard work is important, right? I like to honor the game that I play and play it with integrity. And I think that that's important to teach our athletes, right? Because if we're winning by cheating or exploiting the rules, that's just not a way that I choose to play the game. And I try to instill that in my athletes. Character development, I think there's just so much strength that you learn as a student athlete. It's just important to me that my athletes just care about being good people. And so when we played, it's like I had experiences as a collegiate athlete where I can remember some of the best moments of my career or the best compliments of my career even. I have NCAA plaques, which are wonderful, but they are pale in comparison to the compliments that I got from other players and coaches on opposing teams, because that really means something. That means I played the game, I played it well, and I played it with integrity. I played it in a way where these people are seeing me as a person and can actually appreciate what I did, because I wasn't out there. Yeah, sometimes you win and sometimes you lose. And I wasn't out there calling other kids names or, I was just trying to win the game by playing it. And to me, it's so important that my teams do that. You're not talking back to the officials. You're not, talking poorly to another player on another team.
Right.
Because I do think that translates to real life. Sometimes things don't go your way. So are you going to just curse every person that comes along your path? Or it really is meaningful to me. And I think that my teams are better for it. And the people that I coach are better for it.
It's interesting that you strike this balance. Like, of course we want to win, but there's greater challenges and greater goals here. It's interesting in some of my work in the executive coaching realm, some of the vestiges of this old thinking that to be successful in the corporate world, it's dog eat dog, and you have to be better than the next guy. And it's still there. I run into people who still hold on to that. Yet the evidence is your success in the corporate world will be enhanced if you know how to play in the sandbox with everybody. Right? If you understand leadership from the standpoint of some of the characteristics you're talking about, that it's not simply win, win, win. It's who you are. It's integrity. It's learning how to lose. It's learning how to play together. Sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm curious, again, maybe on this level, with your college student athletes. As a coach, I would imagine that at any given moment, your coach, your nice guy coach, your maybe a little hard ass coach, your parent, your sibling, your some combination, some level of friend, depending upon the needs of your student athletes and moments in their life when they come to you. How do you balance all of that?
Well, Keith, you forgot therapist. That's definitely. Yes,
you're right.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. How do you balance it? I think that it is, it is a difficult thing, but I do think that, the thing that I attempt to do as best I can is just be as real a person as I can. And, part of that is being, honest with kids and not coddling them, but part of that also is letting them know me, right? It's like, I want them to know who I am and to also understand that I am a human being as well. So, I'm always going to do my best for them, and I'm always going to advocate for them, and I'm always going to, have their back, so to speak. But it does help if I believe that they understand that, I will always do the best I can do, and that's what I can do. And sometimes, maybe it's not what they're hoping for. But I do think that the more they can see me as human, which I do think, coaches have a hard time with that sometimes, because you're expected almost in a way to be superhuman and to, everybody's on time. If you're 10 minutes early, you're late, whatever. Sometimes things happen. And I think that we have to hold things to a certain standard, but we are all human. And so I think that the more I let them see the humanity and the human side of me, it's easier to strike that balance.
Yeah. I'm thinking of this. It was a very sad and pretty traumatic experience in its day. It was many years ago. There was a member of an athletic team in the school that I was a part of that died by suicide, and obviously had a very significant impact on everybody, including the coaching staff. And there were a couple of members of the team who came to me and asked me about how we can take care of our coaches. And it was such a wonderful conversation, because they recognize, and I think sometimes we don't give kids enough credit for these moments. They recognize that, we're hurting, but so are those adults who we sometimes just see as adults. And can we care for them? And the last part of that was a fascinating conversation I had with the coach, who felt that, no, I'm here to take care of them. And I kept saying to him, Coach, no, give your kids an opportunity to take care of you right now. Like, let them do that for you and let go of that. I'm all knowing. I'm always have my stuff together. It was such a powerful moment.
Yeah, that's, I do think we all need help sometimes. Yeah. So it's important to step back and allow other people to do that for you.
Yeah.
But I get it's difficult. Yeah,
it is. But so powerful. So, a couple of things that this raises for me from my world is this, we talk in the world of counseling or coaching of this concept of self-disclosure. That how do you, when you're in the helping role, which has a certain boundary to it, just as a coach does to their players, how do you find those places where you do share pieces of yourself that allow people to see beyond just the coach on the sideline and see the human part of you? And I'll add to that, because this I think is so important, because we can now support some of this with some evidence. So Jen, when you do that with your student athletes, let them see a piece of who Jen is, the human being, not always all-knowing, always having everything together. It actually produces this neurochemical in their head called oxytocin, which is the neurochemical that causes us to feel connected to other human beings. So what we now know is when leadership shows vulnerability, it produces oxytocin in the brain of the people that they lead, which causes those people to trust them even more.
Makes sense 100%.
Right,
yes.
right. So we have a little neuroscience behind what has always felt right, and now we know no question about it. So I'm very curious because you mentioned a few moments ago that you started your coaching career in Division I. Listening to you, I'm making an assumption here, so tell me if the assumption is right or wrong, that it was a conscious decision on your part to coach at the Division III level.
Yes, I think that, I loved coaching at Division I, so I do not want it to come across,
Nope.
But it is, on a personal level, it is a more difficult balancing act. But also, again, for me, the experience that I had playing, and again, it was at D1, so there was a certain expectation, but over the years, you could just see a shift in things and a shift as to it. I am not a person that I don't pretend anything, and I don't want to sell something to 17-year-old kids and say, hey, yeah, this is what it's going to be and it's going to be great. And then when you get here, hey, look, if you're not performing or you're not getting it done, then you're gone, or, your scholarship. It was the business of it that I just found a hard time. It was somewhat untenable for me personally, because it didn't line up with my idea of what I was trying to do as a coach. Now, that said, I did make a conscious decision to go to D3. I thought it was a more holistic approach to, seeing the full person, not just the athlete. And it was more academically focused, which I think, frankly, these kids are not going to be playing professional lacrosse and making millions of dollars. I wish that were the case. Maybe some of them will coach, which again, it's not, you're not doing that to make millions of dollars either.
Right.
So I just think that, I know for me, there were things academically that I might have liked to do, or studying abroad, things that I just wasn't allowed to do. And so
you mean you weren't allowed when you were playing Division I? Playing Division I. Right.
Yeah, you just, and of course you trade things,
sure,
and that's okay.
Sure. Yep.
But D3, it seemed like an opportunity to just see my vision through. And of course, on the other side of that, there's, are Division III athletes really being given the opportunity to fully realize their athletic potential? And that's something that I grapple with. It's the resources are different and things are different, but I do think inherently, whatever you put into it, you'll get out. So you will ultimately be the athlete that you would be at a D1, at a D3, but with just a more central focus on academics and really on who you will be once you're out of college, once you've completed these things.
Yeah. So two questions about your perspective on D1 versus D3. Do you think, and I realize this is a very general question, that most Division I athletes come to Division I really with their eyes open about the reality of what that commitment is?
No, I don't. I just think I think that it's very difficult to understand until you're in it. I think you can tell someone, and frankly, there's just so much wrapped up in this idea of like, my kid is playing D1 and they got a scholarship, that there's that. So there's just this pressure, parental pressure. But I think that even if you told a 17-year-old, hey, it's like a full-time job, how could you know what that means? Yeah,
you don't know what that's like.
No. Yeah. I think, they don't know.
Yeah, there's no reference, right? There's no reference to attach that concept full-time job to.
Yeah.
Right. I think I shared this with you when you and I spoke in preparation for the podcast. Some of my funniest and I guess in some ways kind of sad memories of my 15-year-old son playing youth hockey is he played what's called House B, which is the lowest level of youth hockey you could possibly play. There is no way that these kids even make their high school teams. And my memories of sitting in the stands and listening to some of the dads talk about scholarships for their kids. And like that whole narrative in our athletic parental culture it's powerful and overwhelming.
Yeah, indeed. I just am the type of person that tends to think, it's similar as an adult. If all I chase is money, then some part of my life, I will lose some other piece. And I do think that when kids are, sport is presented in that way where you're chasing the scholarship instead of just focusing on it, actually enjoying the sport. Right. It's it's not gonna work out for the long run. Right. That's just how it goes.
And I remember reading somewhere, and I cannot quote the stat other than it's tiny, 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 is the percentage of high school varsity athletes who will ultimately play their sport in college on the Division I level. It's tiny.
Minute, really. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So part B of that question about Division I versus Division III, do you find, again, very general question, that your student athletes, that's quite all right. This is a totally organic podcast. We love to have all household members join in. Who is that, by the way?
That's Willie will no doubt make another appearance.
Awesome. Welcome to the podcast, Willie. Do you find in general that there is, I'm going to use this word, and I don't mean to make it sound judgmental towards Division I, a more balanced mindset on the part of your Division III student athletes who show up, I want to play my sport, but I want a larger college experience as well?
So this is I tread lightly here because this is a difficult question to answer. I think that the system is built so that it's much easier for them to do that. This is tough, Keith, because I really try. I don't want it to come across as disparaging either. Or
right, I totally get it. Right, I'm with you.
Yeah. So, but there's a level of commitment at the Division I level, right, that is actually admirable, and I think that there are lessons learned there that will be of value. It's immeasurable.
Right.
I think the opportunity to not have to commit that way is how D3 is built. Not every program. There are programs that operate at a different level, but in general, the schedule is built differently. Things are just built differently so that you don't necessarily have to commit in that way. So I think that organically they're able to get sort of a different, more 360 experience, if you will, that's not so athletically focused unless you chose to make it that way. Yeah. And even still, there are just limitations built into it. But that doesn't, it's not to say, I want to make sure I don't, it doesn't mean that you can have a full experience at a D1 that you focus on academics and on athletics. It's just the system isn't built for that. So you would have to be so mindful of creating that experience for yourself, which I think most 18 to 22-year-old kids, they're not mindful of that. It's
Right. Well, we're back to what we said a moment ago, that most 18 and 19-year-olds, you could sit there and tell them what this is about, and they'll shake their head yes, and they just don't have that life experience. And I really appreciate what you're saying here when you use the word system, So this isn't simply just about the individual student athlete. It's the system they're walking into, the history of that system, what kind of, what motors that system, so to speak, and what the focus is and the goals are of that system. And so just walking in, again, difficult for a lot of 18 and 19-year-olds to walk in with your eyes open. When you talk about the system, this just popped into my head, Jen. Another memory from my school social work days. There was a young man who came through my high school, I don't know, whatever the hell the equivalent is in high school of like all-American football player. Full ride to Michigan for football. Like that's big time Division I. He chose not to go because he just really at the end of the day wasn't into that level of commitment. The flack he caught from people within my high school, other coaches, the whole athletic department. How can you pass up on this opportunity? And no one was taking a step back and just saying, okay, young man made a very thoughtful decision. At the very least, it's his decision that as he looked at and evaluated what would be involved in being a Division I athlete on that level, said, no, not for me.
Yeah. And I think, the sports focused coach in me is like, oh, because you see an athlete that is that good.
Yeah,
and it's like, oh, what are you doing? Like, please go do this. But, there's another piece to it that I think of often where, and to be fair, Keith, I would not have changed I would have played Division I.
Sure,
I would choose that again. But things are different now. And, where there used to be a roster of 26, 27, now, there's rosters of 35 and 40. And that to me, I like to think that I would have worked hard enough to make sure that I was on the field, but it's like, do you want to, or it's even kids that are going to elite programs, but not setting foot on the field for 3 years out of their career. Right. That could have gone to, maybe a top 15 and not a top 5. And I'm the type of would you rather win or would you rather play?
Yeah, but that's been your mindset since you were a little kid.
Exactly. I don't give me a ring, but if I wasn't on the field helping, right. It would be difficult for me to accept. I'd rather play. Yeah.
Well, listen, I appreciate your wanting to walk on this topic tenderly. Because it's complex, right? And it's multifactorial, and there's so many different pieces to this conversation about Division I athletics and college Division III, and it's not right, wrong, good, bad, and it's not good kid, bad kid. There's just a lot of pieces to it that make it a pretty challenging conversation, I would imagine, all the way around for many student athletes. So let's move on. Tell us about this really cool program that you head up called the Brooklyn Crescents. What is it about? How did you get this started? And I think for me, I'm most fascinated, again, because I'm a white kid who grew up in the burbs. So, thinking about this in a more urban setting, it's just fascinating to me.
Yeah. So, I did not start the program. The program began in 2006 by, mostly former collegiate players that were living in Brooklyn. And, they got together and they were like, we want lacrosse to continue and we want to do it in a way we want to grow the game in Brooklyn and in a way where we provide an opportunity for every kid that wants to play. And we introduce kids to it. And they really did it just for the love of the game, which to me is just so remarkable and certainly not something that you find often. And they didn't monetize it. It was just, you charged what you needed to charge to, provide the opportunity. And in fact, in the early days of the program, these late 20 somethings, were, putting uniforms on their credit cards because the program wasn't, making enough money to sustain its actual, events. So they started the program, and it grew so much over a 10-year period that they needed to bring someone on to run it. And at the time, I had just stepped away from collegiate coaching, and I really wanted to get involved at a younger level, but also, to me, just this opportunity of providing opportunity and growing the game of lacrosse in such a non-traditional place, I was really interested in. And I was fortunate enough to get the position as executive director. And since then, it's really been, we are a not-for-profit program. Never it's 15 years now, has a child been turned away for financial reasons. That we give away $30,000 to $40,000 in scholarship every year. It's really, it really gives me that opportunity to just provide the kids a platform to play a sport that I love, in a way that has nothing to do with money, really, or very little to do with money. It's just for the enjoyment of it. So it's, I'm really proud of the work that we do. And I think that in this day and age, it's so, youth sports in general has become just such a mega business. Yeah. And I think it's that particular issue that has created so many problems. It's kids, you're investing. So it's like you're investing in your young child at such an early age. So then it makes this like, well, those dollars will come back to us in scholarship later. And It's that mentality that is just really, it's not me. And so the Crescents really give me this opportunity to bring, that same side of how I see sport and what it should be. I get to do that with kids that are pre-K through high school, as well as, coaching collegiate lacrosse. So it's, I feel very fortunate to work with the Crescents.
It's an interesting metaphor you just used about that from an early age, are some maybe investing in their child, almost like investing in some financial vehicle, hoping for a payout in 15 years. That, as we mentioned a few minutes ago, the stats about how few will get that payout. And you could see how for some, I don't want to be judgmental of parents, because Lord knows us parents listen to a bazillion crazy narratives ourselves about what we're supposed to do as parents. But if I'm the parent that buys into that metaphor that I'm going to invest, and the payout will be a free ride to college, how many will be disappointed and possibly ruin their child's experience with sport?
Yeah, it's an awful lot of pressure. And, I've seldom seen that work out. And I think, to see a kid 12 years old that's burnt out on a sport, yeah. I can't imagine. And I know personally that I wouldn't have continued to play. It just wouldn't, if there was that much pressure on me. If somebody told me that D1 was what I was intended to do, and that was my pathway when I was 9, yeah. It wouldn't have I just know it wouldn't have happened for me. So I'm grateful that I didn't know.
Yeah. So in moving from a head coach at Manhattanville, having your coach hat on and all of the skills and talents that you bring to coaching your student athletes there, and now to the Brooklyn Crescents, before we even talk about the actual on the field coaching with that age group, in being the CEO of an organization, what skills and strategies do you bring to the growth of that entity? Again, before we even get on to the playing field.
Yeah, I mean, I think that part of the Crescents program too is we are volunteer based. So I am the only paid employee of that program, which is, when I think about coaching, it is, I am in a constant role of finding other coaches or people that are capable of being coaches. That's from parents on the sideline or people that are somehow, involved or could be involved. So I do think that, the skill set of a coach to then find and groom other coaches and keep people invested and involved in doing something for, again, for no pay, no money. That's, that is difficult to do. Yeah. And I do think that, part of that is helping people to understand the value that they bring to the lives of these children. And then, quite frankly, a leadership role of rallying, it's like you have to get everyone to buy into what you're doing. And I think that I do that constantly, not just with coaches, but with the families and the parents. And I think that that's, part of a coaching skill set that is, incredibly helpful in my role with the Crescents.
Yeah. Yeah. How many, on any given day, how many volunteers are we talking about here?
We have anywhere from 25 to 40 volunteers, depending on the season. And, it's remarkable what my coaches and program directors do.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And how many participants?
So in any given season, we have about 350 participants. We have programs in the spring and fall are our primary seasons. We do limited winter and really no summer, which is nice that it gives everyone a break.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm going to make an assumption, given that you are based in Brooklyn, that there is a cross-section of ethnic and cultural backgrounds that participate in your program, both on the youth level and volunteer level. True?
It is remarkably diverse. And I think that, I feel fairly confident and comfortable in saying that you could not find a more diverse lacrosse program, anywhere. And that is part of what I love. We have the vice president of JP Morgan Chase's kids out there running alongside kids that, that just got a full scholarship from us and a full equipment package because they couldn't afford it. So, and they are none the wiser. And I think that's the thing that I love the most. There's no different. They don't know. Yeah. And I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. So related to that is that, when I did your introduction, I had mentioned that you serve on the Diversity and Inclusion Subcommittee for U.S. Lacrosse. Talk a little bit about that. What's the goal of this subcommittee within the larger world of lacrosse?
Yeah, I am really proud to do work with U.S. Lacrosse, and I think that they have worked very hard over the last several years to try to sort of change the culture of the game. I mean, there is no one that is involved in lacrosse that does not know it has been predominantly I will just call it a rich white sport. and that's, that is something that I feel that U.S. Lacrosse is really committed to changing. And so, part of what I do, and certainly, with the perspective I have of running such a diverse program in an urban environment, is just trying to, figure out how best to actually influence change and make the sport more reflective of our culture, at large. And and try to continue to provide opportunity in non-traditional areas. So, I do work with them to try to, figure out how best they can do that and how best they can put resources into certain areas and programs to continue to diversify the sport, which benefits all of us.
Everybody
that are part of it. Yes, absolutely.
Right. Now, does U.S. Lacrosse as an entity, does it speak to lacrosse at the college level, or are we talking about more the level of like the Brooklyn Crescents? Yeah,
so they are, responsible for the national team. So the U.S. national program.
Team. Okay.
And then, they are, their membership platform is really geared towards anyone involved in the sport, but they don't oversee really anything directly having to do with collegiate programs, so to speak.
Right. All right. Awesome. It's so nice to know that work is being done out there, and that somebody's eyes are on that, and that diversity is a goal.
Yeah, definitely. It's important.
Oh, so important. And as you said, it makes everything about the game richer and deeper and more meaningful, and just inclusive of who we are as a nation, in all of our varied expression. So last question for you, Jen, that I ask every one of my guests, because a foundational component, and you've talked about it in so many different ways, a foundational component of any good helping conversation is to be strength-based with the people that we work with. So take a minute to brag about Jen Nardi. What are some of your strengths and unique skills and talents that you bring to your coaching and to and to building an organization?
Yeah, I don't like doing that too much. But I think that really I am empathetic. I think I am a person that does very well at understanding other people. I see other people as they are.
Right.
And I think I love people. I'm very good at loving people. And I think that's really, that's my gift in life is loving people without, being afraid of really what that means, being able to be vulnerable with other people. I think it's a gift.
Yes,
I do.
It is.
I think it's something that is difficult to do. But that to me is how I have been able to be successful in all of the roles that I have played.
Yeah, beautiful. Well said. Well said. It's okay every now and then for us to brag about ourselves a little bit. Yeah,
it's uncomfortable.
Yes,
but
it is.
Yes.
Yeah, it's not something we're often asked to do, but it's important because that's what you're fostering in the people you work with, is them being able to celebrate what's awesome about them. You mentioned that the Brooklyn Crescents are a not-for-profit, so if somebody was interested in more information or maybe even making a donation, what would be the best way to get a hold of you or learn more about the organization?
Yeah, sure. Our website, which is brooklyncrescents.com, everything leads to me. So if you are finding an email or phone number, which all of the information is there, certainly the opportunity to donate is also there. But, we love getting people involved with our program in any way that they can be. So the website is definitely the best way to do that. Okay,
great. And as always, on whatever platform you happen to be listening on, I will make sure that URL is in the show notes. Just go there and reach out to Jen. Jen Nardi, thank you so much for this conversation today. I'm so glad that traffic cooperated and allowed us to get together.
Thank you, Keith. I appreciate it, and I had such a good time talking with you.
Good, me too. This was wonderful, and it sounds like no question that both Manhattanville and the Brooklyn Crescents are in wonderful hands. I wish you all the best.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So I hope people found that as thoughtful and as inspiring and maybe a little bit educational as I did. It was a wonderful conversation, and again, another opportunity to maybe shift our thinking about a group of people out there, coaches, that maybe are not the first group that we think of when we think of a helping conversation, but clearly in talking with Jen about both her coaching and organizational development with the Brooklyn Crescents, all of the significant components of a helping conversation are built into what Jen does. So I thank you for hanging out with us today, and I invite you to join us again as we continue to shine a light on the skill and talent of individuals like Jen Nardi that invite another into that compassionate, complex, and intimate space called the helping conversation. Everybody have a great day.
We thank you for sitting in on our discussion today on just one unique version of the helping conversation. We would love to hear your thoughts on today's podcast, so we sincerely invite you to follow, rate, and most importantly, review our episodes. For more information on Keith Greer and this podcast, log on to keithgreercoaching.com. Please join us for our next episode as we continue the exploration and celebration of the practice, art, and science of the helping conversation.